Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of HBCU to Startup. Today we are talking to Rodney Williams, who is the CEO and founder of LISNR. And co-hosting today is Ellis Taliaferro, who is the VP of Global Technology and Enterprise Architect at JP Chase Morgan Bank. I think I said that wrong, Ellis. And as usual, I'm Hadia, and I'll be hosting as well. So if you could just take a few minutes. We'll start with Ellis first since he's a co-host. If you just want to do a brief introduction of yourself, Ellis.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellis Taliaferro, and as Hadia mentioned, I'm a enterprise architect at JP Morgan Chase. Really interested to hear about LISNR and the technologies here. So, really looking forward to this hangout, and I'm glad Hadia asked me to co-host it with her.
You forgot to mention Hampton. Forgot to represent for Hampton University.
That's right. I am a proud Hampton University alumni. Rodney might not like this, but this is the real HU. Just
All right. Okay, Rodney, do you want to just give a brief introduction or background about yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate for you guys having me. Rodney Williams, co-founder, CEO of LISNR. Been a CEO for roughly 4 years. We've raised a little over $15 million post Series B. Prior to that, I was at P&G in brand management and marketing. Prior to that, I graduated from Howard. And then a couple degrees earlier, I graduated from West Virginia University down in Morgantown. Completely obsessed with technology. That's kind of my short background. I could be long, but I think that's good enough.
Yes. I also read somewhere that you actually you worked at Lockheed for like a brief second or something. I say that because Alice and I both used to work at Lockheed. That's where we met.
Yeah, I did. Post undergrad, I went to Lockheed, and it was right after National Energy Technology Laboratory. So I actually worked on 2 sites at Lockheed.
Okay.
But yeah, I never been an engineer, so I didn't study engineering. But when you work around Lockheed and National Energy Technology Laboratory, you tend to work around engineers and kind of be fascinated by the things that they're building, and that's something that I kind of always was always a part of me.
So what are what are your degrees in?
So I have a Bachelor of Arts in Economics. I have a Bachelor's in Business Administration and Finance. I have a Master's in Integrated Marketing, Communication, and then I have an MBA in Finance and Supply Chain.
Awesome. It's a lot of schooling.
Yeah, there's some rationale behind it all. It wasn't chaotic as it sounds.
Yeah. So can you give us just a brief, intro to LISNR?
Yeah. LISNR, we created something that we call smart tones. They're right above the human hearing level, so they're completely silent to humans, but they have the ability to transmit data over audio. So literally what we're doing is transmitting customized packets of data every second through audio that you can't hear. The magic behind it is that it's completely receptive by any speaker or any microphone. It can be broadcast by any speaker. It could be added to songs. It could be added to broadcasts. It could be played in a stadium speaker. For use cases to help folks understand some of the things that we're doing, we have a lot of stadium customers or festival customers, and they're literally playing our technology over the speaker system, and they're using it to trigger notifications or messaging to your app. The magic behind it, it's not dependent on cell phone or Wi-Fi connectivity, because all of the data transmission regarding that notification or whatever you want to push is happening all through the audio versus making a cell phone a data call. But that's just one of the things that we're doing.
And so we already have a question that came in, and for those who are watching on the Hangouts interface, the Hangouts on Air interface, if you don't know, there should be a 9 square icon at the top of your screen. If you click on that, you'll see another icon below that says Q&A. once you click on that, it should open up a box where you're allowed to answer. You could submit a question. So we have one question from, and I apologize, people, if I pronounce your name wrong. I think this is Trayvon, who's asking. You went into it a little bit, but they're asking. They're curious to know how you actually deliver an ad experience via an audio tag if mobile phones aren't always listening for audio input. And does the user already have to be engaged in a mobile app for the feature to actually work?
Yeah, great question. So we're an SDK company, so we live and breathe in other applications. We used to a while ago, but it was confusing the market, so we completely turned off our application, and we literally live in other applications. So depending on the application and the use case is how and when we listen. Can we listen in the background? Yes. Can we listen all the time? Yes. But in most cases, we are listening based on event, time of day, or app activity, and we call that smart listening. The whole promise of this technology is to one day replace or be an equivalent to Bluetooth in a number of cases. So our goal is to be next to the Bluetooth button. That is our goal. Despite today, we live and breathe at the dependency of the application and how they want to use us.
Cool.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to extend on that, Rodney, so do you view, I guess, your integration with third-party developers and other companies that want to leverage LISNR tech, do you view that as like a key to a partnership for extending the LISNR brand? Is that something like you guys really want to, really push to make sure, is that like really, I guess, influential in extending the LISNR brand, just working with third-party developers in that app ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things we had to learn how to become an ingredient company. If you guys are familiar with Twilio is the text messaging engine that's a part of Uber, and it's a part of many applications. Or you're familiar with Urban Airship, they're the notification engine that's a part of a number of applications. These two companies, their technologies are included in over 2 billion apps around the world. And once we realize, hey, we're just an ingredient, we're a white label technology solution, and what we've created is a new type of internet, or a new type of, I like to call it, way from data to go from A to B. So we should try to make as many people drive on that highway as easy, as efficiently as possible. And we shouldn't worry about, just like internet, the creator of internet doesn't create web pages. They just create a really, really fast highway. That's really, from a technical standpoint, what we're doing inside. We're creating the best audio transmission via audio. And then we're allowing our app developers and our partners to find great use cases for that highway, whether it's advertising, whether it's messaging. We're working with banking institutions like Chase to use this instead of NFC for payments. We're using, if you go to our offices, it's our security system. So when you walk up to a door, every employee has an individual smart tone that allows access. I mean, we're completely changing the way devices connect by using audio. So we are still in the infancy of the use cases and some of the things that we're pushing forward.
Cool. So let's rewind a little bit. How did you come to found LISNR? What was I read a little bit about it, but I think the pieces of the blurb on the internet is founded while on a StartupBus. So maybe you can expound on that a bit.
Yeah, so the way this story really, so I was at P&G, and I actually am published 3 patents while I was at P&G. I was the first marketer to do so. And at the moment I figured out I can write a patent without actually knowing how to create what I was protecting, it completely opened my mind. And I started being put on tons of digital teams at P&G, trying to help them figure out what's next. And one of those teams was a mere question of how are we going to market to consumers 5 years from now? And it was just a holy grail. It was a holy grail situation where you can always understand who's in front of a particular piece of advertising. Maybe you could potentially speak to them differently. And it was this whole concept that sound was always present. And I kind of just got stuck there. And I was just like, how can we use sound, right? And I just started to do my own research and, looking up fingerprinting and watermarking solution. That's basically what Shazam, the equivalent of Shazam technology. And then I wrote down notes that basically said Morse code that you can't hear. And took that concept with a friend of mine, went on a startup bus, and we had to focus it. We said, hey, we're pretty much going to put Morse code that you can't hear, and we're going to put it in music, and then we're going to perfect this technology and allow consumers to unlock things from the music they hear. And it has some reasons why we thought it would work better. And that's essentially how it started. Started as LISNR. We went on this bus. There's a core thing that happened. As we were creating this high-frequency audio, and we were adding it to music. Music is then distributed, and then music is distributed in like a number of different formats, and then it's filtered and it's compressed. So we had to figure out how to modulate and modify high-frequency audio so that it could survive compression. Within that modification or modulation of the audio, we cracked a nugget and was like, wow, we can actually hide data. So, the process from, had an idea, said we're just going to focus to music to, a challenge and making it survive in music was actually how we actually made the technology better and how we actually made it so robust to where it is today.
And so this is my question. I know you've mentioned before, and also I listened to your Blacks in Technology podcast with Greg. And so you don't claim to be technical, even though you definitely sound technical. How did you go from this idea and this concept to actually building this technical platform? Or how did you convince? I know you have a team, but how did you convince other team members to come on to actually implement this concept?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I think, and this is my challenge to anyone who wants to get in startups, I think that we do a great job at convincing, folks to be engineers, but I don't think we do a great job of convincing people to be thinkers and to learn and think at a rapid pace. If we look at some of the greatest minds in technology, like Elon Musk or even Jack Dorsey, Jack went from Twitter to Square. He went from a social media network to changing the way we make financial transactions, to Elon going from batteries from PayPal to what is he doing next? He's doing SpaceX. I don't think he's an astrophysicist, designing a rocket. I think what those characters all share is the ability to really think at a high level and learn at a high level and also inspire a team at a high level. We got off that bus and I had 5 co-founders. I had my entire technical team to go out and build. That team was the team that I had essentially for the first 8 months of this company. And I think even to this day, I'm inspiring great engineers and scientists to do more and do better. And I'm not looking at it from a technical angle. I very, very basic things. I want this to work faster. I want it to be more efficient on the battery. I don't want it to drain people's consumers. And I want more data. And if I can have those 3 things, I think that from a marketing standpoint, from a use case standpoint, I think that we can do something great in the market. So it's a very, very different approach and different angle. But if I was to sum it all up, I think that throughout school, I just learned how to learn at a high rate. And then today, I'm learning how to inspire and manage and lead, but I'm still just learning. And yeah, if you take me in an investor meeting, I do sound like one of the world's most expert high-frequency audio, but that's because I had to become that. And I had to learn, and I had to own it. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But by far, I am not an audio engineer or an engineer in any capacity. But I had to learn and be passionate about my product if I wanted people to believe in my dream.
Ellis, did you have any questions? I will let you get in instead of me holding up.
No, you can go ahead, Hadi. It's okay. Like, I know there was a question coming in from the Startup Nest, which is actually one of the questions I was going to ask as well. Rodney, it's really how do you feel about diversity in technology? Like, do you feel that the tech industry is doing a good enough job in including and being inclusive to entrepreneurs of color?
Yeah, you know what? I think that the good thing about it is I don't think they're doing a good job. What I do think, though, I think that there's a lot of people making it, bringing attention to the fact that they're not doing a good job, and I think that's one of the best things that can happen. You know, I've been doing this since 2011 and in the beginning of 2012. So back in those days, no one was having the conversation. There wasn't a Black in Tech list. You know, there wasn't a lot of activity. There was a little bit, but I'm excited about the energy behind companies trying to tackle the issue. And I think there's problems all across the board. I think there's not enough diversity at tech companies. I don't think there's enough investors investing in tech companies. I don't think there's enough black investors or minority investors. I think it's the entire spectrum. And one of the biggest things that I was in a conversation, and it was, wow, there aren't VCs investing in tech that are in minority tech. And then I thought about the wealth of African Americans or minorities or women, and why aren't they investing in companies that look and feel like themselves? And it's probably because they don't have they're not comfortable with technology. So the challenge probably to our entire culture is that we got to stop with the excuse that, oh, we're not comfortable with technology. We all either have a smartphone, watch a smart television. We all tend to find out how to work Netflix pretty quickly. And in my opinion, we live and breathe technology all day. So we are technology, and we should start owning it. And I do think it can change, but I think we should change it with ourselves first.
That's cool. So I'm going to jump in there because it's a really good point. Because then the next question is, a lot of people say, well, there aren't enough people, or there aren't enough of us to, in terms of that have enough wealth to start investing the amount of money it takes to create these type of, or to create this ecosystem. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, yeah, is there a wealth gap between minorities and non-minorities? Yes. So I just think, when I like to say, like, if the entire ecosystem is broke, right? The entire ecosystem. So I look at the entire ecosystem in terms of inclusion of diversity in the tech is broke, right? So tech companies can't hire fast enough. There's not enough engineers. There's not enough investing. It's not enough. I mean, it's just everything across the board. So I look at the very first thing. I look at the easiest thing that we can tackle is our community. And I think we can teach our community how to be technologists. We can teach our community how to create things. But I think we should also teach our community to invest in technology. And I would argue and say that there is a lot of wealth, right? If I look at the top richest minorities in the U.S., it's a lot of entertainment wealth, whether that's Oprah or Jay-Z or people that run and buy basketball teams. My challenge to them is, why do that? Why, Oprah gave $43 million to Weight Watchers. Why couldn't she take $20 million and start a seed fund for minorities and women of color, right? Like, there is money. I'm not gonna believe the joke that there's not money. I think that I've gone and spoken to Magic Johnson and seen how much money he's invested with companies that just are not technology, and the list goes on and on from African Americans that are wealth, but these guys are not invested in technology, and that is the honest truth. Right. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, part of the reason why I'm a developer, so I'm kind of plugged into tech a lot. But another reason is that if you look at the wealth that's been created, the majority of the wealth that's been created in this country in like the past 10 or 20 years, it's been through technology companies. So I look at this, I honestly think that I look at this, any type of platform where we talk about getting underserved people more involved in technology. I actually see that as a social justice topic to help, at least lessen the gap between economic inequality.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things and if you guys want to go read it, if you go back to like August 4th, look up President
Mm-hmm.
Obama's transcript from demo day, but he
Okay.
basically just said, long story short, he said like 40% of the new jobs in the past 72 months have been tech companies. It's the reason why our GDP is improving. It's the reason why unemployment is so low. But only 1% of those companies are minority led. But out of the 1% that's minority led, they outperform the majority, like 2 or 3 to 1. So
Mm-hmm.
he said his biggest impact to grow, to continue to grow the GDP, is if he can increase that 1% of minority companies that get funded to 3%, 4%, 5%, it's going to make significant impact to the overall GDP. And that's what this is all about. It's about growing the economy so more people can have jobs and our communities can be different. So um, we just need to tackle it.
Yeah. So we have a Greg just joined us, and he actually posted a question, and he just wants to know were there any technology blueprints that you use to base your technology off?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going down a road, right, and I think you have to do your research. I mean, from whether it was patents, I mean, we did a patent search. We spent $20,000 of we convinced a legal team to do all our legal work before we ever spent a dollar, and they gave us up to $25,000. But we spent a significant amount of money doing IP searches and looking at what people were doing. There was people trying to use audio to do the things that we do in the 90s. One of them was Microsoft. The reality is that you didn't have these powerful smartphones. They were trying to do computer to computer. We looked at other type of technologies in the market. If you guys ever heard of Klinkle, is it called Klinkle? I don't know. These are like, honestly, if you look these guys up, I mean, I think it was like MIT or Stanford. He raised like $40 million, but he wanted to drive payments using audio. The reality is just he never got it to work. And I mean, and the companies, Yamaha has a product called InfoSound, where literally they're playing every time you press a keynote on the newer pianos, it's actually pushing some level of code to a device. So when we looked at all of that as a research standpoint, my engineers, they thought that we could actually do a lot better, and we thought it was almost like the emergence of what we call today the Internet of Sound, and this ability that these powerful devices that we have that have microphones also have a significant capability to transmit data through them, and it's untapped. And let's be the leaders of it. Why not?
So Rodney, do you feel like? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
was
just
gonna
think.
say, so like you. Oh.
Nah, go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, man. Go ahead. It's your show, man. Go ahead.
Somebody go.
I was just making sure that, when it comes to the blueprint, I think you always have to take a look at other technologies. And to this day, when we go to our business model, we looked at Twilio. When we talked about how do we sell, we went to Urban Airship. I mean, these companies are not companies that we all know, but you got to find companies that can help you understand how to bring your technology to business. So yes, that's something that we've done.
Okay. And so, like, you mentioned, like, some of the companies who were, in some way, shape, or form were, I guess, trying to do some of the things that LISNR was doing historically and then weren't necessarily successful about it or with it. Do you feel like you have competitors today to LISNR technology? Then, if you do, what makes LISNR different or, than those competitors that you have?
I think number one, we're the best in class product. We're the best in the market. I think 2.5 years ago, so not the full 4 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we made a decision, despite what we told the market, despite all the cool stuff we did in music, despite all the cool marketing things we did, that we were going to take our engineering talent and they were going to focus on making the best smart tone ever. We are 5 or 6 versions later. We have 10 more versions to go. We completely opened up the dream world of vision in terms of where we wanted this technology to go, and we've been focused on it from a very long time. So that's number one what separated us. I think what also separated us is that my LISNR isn't ran by a technologist. My competitors are mostly, I got 2 companies out of Israel. that we look at as competitors or true competitors, and they're nothing wrong with that, but they're just ran by technologists. And one of the biggest things that we always go and go to investors, we've sold this product since day one. We've made money every year. And whether it was a bad version of the product, and what we've been able to do is wrap this technical product in a packaging that's very receptive to marketers, brands, teams, and whoever wants to use this. And we've been able to sell it. So I think there's a lot of reasons why companies succeed versus others. And sometimes it's because it's a good product. Sometimes it's because they can sell it. Sometimes it's a good team. I think that LISNR is trying to hit the ground on every single one of those cylinders. And today, I'm extremely proud to say that we are beating the market on those three.
Excellent.
So, I mean, you mentioned talking about the people who run, and obviously you being, the leader of your own organization, but the people who are within your organization, what are some of the things that you look for when hiring or selecting individuals to come on to your company?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for outages, to be honest. This is a business. I'm looking for you to be great at the things that I'm bad at, or great at the things that as a company we're bad at, right? Whether that's engineering talent, whether that's leadership, whether that's management, whether that's experience or expertise. I think we can never. I mean, you can completely change the projection of your company with one hire or a few hires. And I give you an example, and I think we did. I think there was a key hire. Think about it. We're in the audio business. I've never been in the startup world, but I would love to attract someone who sold a company, who raised a significant round, and who led a business. So I literally went on LinkedIn and found someone, and it was through a partnership and a little bit further, but who became our president, he was a GM at Gracenote. He had already sold 2 companies. His company was purchased by Gracenote. He was leading an audio fingerprinting and watermarking division at Gracenote. His business unit was making $250 million a year. So, all right, we convinced him to be our president. That was a marquee moment in LISNR's future, a marquee moment for our investors to see. But we were able to attract that talent because our product was good, and I think we had good things. But when you're talking about how you continue to grow, those are the things you have to continue to do, and those are the things that I don't think a lot of people talk about. But I'm all about it because it can completely be a competitive advantage and separate you from your rest. Absolutely.
I mean that's and to be fair, how many people is LISNR now in terms of employees?
33 employees.
33 employees. It's pretty large and growing. But when you were at, think back to when you were at 5 employees, what were some of those key positions in terms of those people who were their very first early hires were very important to where you are now? And if I back to diversity in tech, so there's a lot of people now who hire from their network in terms of who they know, because those key people those are the people who are they're comfortable with, and they know that they can grow the company with them. However, when you're working with a team that's 5, if you get a bad hire at one time, it can completely also tank a company at such a small area. So that's why a lot of people aren't as open to kind of take risk. I would say take risk in hiring outside their network. Going back to when you were, what were some things that you looked at in some of your very earlier employees, like when you were at 5 people?
So number one, I obviously didn't have the network of friends and engineering that could help me. So nothing came out of my network in the beginning. My first 2 hires are still with the company today. They are 2 of the most important people to our success. Again, I hired outage. We needed an extremely smart engineer. that was a brilliant person. Because we were building a brilliant technology stack, and the most brilliant candidate we could find he was currently in a master's program or maybe PhD program. He was from Kentucky, completely out of my network. But you know what? He loved audio, and he was a geek about it. And he was completely fascinated by what we do. And this is something that I also should tell founders when you guys are going after your first hires. Getting something you need is the number one thing. And what you also need them to do is believe in the company you're building and fall in love with your passion. Because if they fall in love with the passion and the product and the dream, that's all that needs. You guys don't need to be best friends. You guys don't. This is like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to war and I'm going to go to fight, I want the best swordsman. And he don't necessarily need to like me, but he should respect me because I'm the best person with the arrow. Like, that's we're going to war, and I think that's kind of how I built my company, especially in the beginning days. Actually, up until this point, I still am like that. I mean, I'm all about and that's a part of your job, right? You're a CEO, you're a founder. Your job is to make people work together better and inspire people and attract people. It's too easy to get your friends to go out and build things.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
I'm going to actually just open it up again for those who are watching on the Hangout on Air interface. You can actually click the 9 square icon on the top of your screen. It'll open up and display a Q&A icon. Click on that, and you're able to submit your questions through that. And for those of you who are watching through the YouTube, if you tweet at us, I'll re-ask your questions. So I want to actually go back to when I listened to the podcast that you did with Greg, the most interesting thing that I found is that in the very beginning, after you left StartupBus, you went and raised money right away. And what was interesting to me is that there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of advice that comes from the Valley in terms of, there needs to be a struggle first, or you need to struggle before you actually go raise. You need to build a lot of validation before you actually go raise. And then I think the question that Greg asked you was, or someone asked you, was there a change in your lifestyle from when you left P&G to actually become a founder? And you said no, because you actually raised the amount that you needed to live on. How were you able to convince investors from the very beginning, to come on board?
Yeah, so in literally the past 3 weeks, I've been using this scenario, and hopefully you guys like it. I think it's pretty funny. Well, I actually think talking to investors, attracting investors, it's like going out on dates. It's like meeting a lady. And the reason why I say that, and if I tell you about my story, I walked off the stage at our startup competition, and I met my first investor. He took us out to dinner. He liked the concept. He said, come meet again in a couple weeks. I want to see some improvement. We came back in 2 weeks. We had an improvement. He said, I need you to see if you can put some IP around this. I want to understand how real this is, how protectable this is. I want you to also, I want you to build an MVP, and not a great version, but just like a simple version. I want you to go out, because we were in music space. He said, I want you to go out and attract some music talent, whether I want you to go out and sound in partnership with a label or something like that. And literally every 2 to 3 weeks we were meeting with this investor, and in 3.5 months we completed everything on the list of things he needed to complete. And I remember going to him and saying, hey, you promised that if we did these things that you were going to lead our round. And they did. And that scenario is that I think it's very true, and I think it's very true of every investor that's ever invested in us. They want to see improvement in productivity, and it's about building a relationship with them, just as you're building a relationship with your team. You know, every moment that they asked for me to bring something back, it was like going on a date. And you know, at first we were going doing coffees, then we went to lunch. Eventually we had dinner, and eventually, you know, she asked me to stay home, and and I really believe that's how it is with every single investor. It's rare. It is. I don't think I've had any investor that here's my idea, goes through the deck, sees the product, and was like, okay, I want to give you X amount. I want to give you $1 million. It doesn't work like that. They want to build that rapport. They want to build that relationship, and they want to see the progress. And I think I think that's what got my investors, number one, to invest so fast, and I mean, in their words, they had to see the progress that we made in 3 months. It was like out of this world. And I think, you know, what also scared them is that we went out to San Francisco and we won a pitch competition out in San Francisco with Tim Draper. And it was like out of this world. We had a lot of investors starting to figure like, who are these guys? And I just think that you got to go out and continue to do progress, be smart, be diligent. I also had an entire team. I had my entire team, myself, CTO, a designer, an iOS, an Android, and another salesperson. Like, this was the founding crew. So there wasn't a team issue. There wasn't a product issue. But it was an issue that all of us have full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. So if you want this to continue to accelerate, you got to invest. And if you don't invest, I'm going to go out and make sure someone else does.
Yeah, I mean, that was really a great anecdote, Rodney. So I know we talked about earlier about, you know, kind of bridging the gap and fixing the ecosystem in terms of, you know, minority entrepreneurs and whatnot. So I guess the question is, like, and you probably touched on this a little bit in your story there, but are there, like, you know, a set of, like, you know, 2 or 3 key things that you would say to minority entrepreneurs, you know, these are the things you need to focus on and think about when you're going after to get funding from these investors? And I guess it's all about, like you mentioned, this forming that rapport and treating it like as a date, right? So, like, but are there, like, highlights that you would say, you know, these are the 3 things that you guys should really think about and really try to strive to really achieve and really pique the interest of investors to actually get funding from them?
Yeah, you know, I think I cannot stress the importance of talking to investors early. I mean, I hear all types of folks say, don't get investors, you know, da da da. And when I mean investors, I don't mean, you know, Mike, Tommy, some guy who does angel investing. I mean an institutional seed investor, right? A group that knows how to invest in companies, right? They're going to give you significant amount of feedback early. So you got to understand, a week after I did a startup competition, right? The day I get off the stage, I had my first dinner with an investor who gave me feedback on what he needs to see in the company. So I never wasted time doing things that an investor didn't care about. And that's some of the big things I think new companies do, right? Oh, I need to get a product out. Oh, I need this, I need that. And sometimes you're right, but maybe you talk to an investor and he's like, you know what, I like your product, I like you, but I'm uncomfortable investing in a company that doesn't have a CTO and it's a tech company. Or like, investors have, you know, they have things that make them uncomfortable about your company. And you need the sooner you can know that, the better you can position yourself and the better you can position the company. So I think just talking to investors is really early. I think creating a great team early is important. Do not try to do this on your own. Find talent and bring it together and go after it. And they don't all have to be founders, but they can be the founding team. It's very different. And I just think, if you know, I like all the first couple employees to hire to be all in. Like, they would do it for equity. They wouldn't even do it for salary. Like, they should be that passionate about your concept. And if they're not, maybe it's not a great concept. I don't know. I think team and talking to investors really, really early is just really, really important. And I think also the third thing would be, like, getting ready to learn at a high rate. You know, I had to learn what a seed round. I had to learn what investing meant. I had to learn what a cap table was about. And I got a lawyer. I also got a lawyer day one, by the way, guys. I can, you know, lawyers for great companies, they will work for free until you get your first investment. And a lawyer will sit down and tell you so much, right? What is the average valuation for a company like yourself? What are some of the nuances that people will need to see? They also know investors that they can introduce you to. So And then there's always a list of other things, but I just think those three are some of the things that I've seen a few companies make mistakes, and I think they could avoid them.
We have a question from Antonio, who's actually another Howard alum. And his question is, what would you say was the biggest risk you took early on that led to the highest reward for the company?
You know, so I think the biggest risk that I took is, so we were in Cincinnati. That was a big risk, right? That wasn't the biggest risk. I think I quickly realized that Cincinnati wasn't the greatest ecosystem for my customer base, and who was going to actually use the product first, and who was going to be advocates and supporters of this company. So, I literally maybe 3 months after I started LISNR, I started spending like 1 to 2 weeks in New York. Whether I was sleeping on someone's couch or whether I was doing hotel tonight every night. I literally almost left my company. Like, folks would be like, "Where's Rodney?" Even to this day, they ask me, "Where's Rodney?" But I knew that we would live and die with the traction from customers. So I was on a hunt to find the first adopter, the early adopter, and that risk with me coming to New York, I mean, it led to more investment. It led to us signing a deal with Roc Nation. Somehow I got into that office. Sometime I got the pitch, and somehow they liked it. That led to how attached we are to New York, given some of our success, despite us being a company headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio. And that was probably the biggest risk. I took a lot of risks socially, as well as, think about the emotional impact of just living in a suitcase. While your team was off in Cincinnati, Ohio, it was pretty tough, but it led to some good things that I'm proud about.
And so you mentioned the deal with Roc Nation. I heard the story again from the podcast, but could you repeat that story in terms of how did you actually end up in the room with Roc Nation, or how did you come to get that partnership?
Yeah, I was in a meeting in New York with an angel group out of New York, and this is some Howard love story too.
Yeah.
And that angel group's head lawyer was someone by the name of Corey Martin, and Corey Martin was a Howard alum, and he walks away and he's like, "You know what? You're gonna get this money from this angel group," but he said something like, "Hey, I'm heading over to Roc Nation. Like, I think they would love to hear you. Do you want to come by?" It was something like that. It wasn't much more than that. Of course, I said yeah, and I went by, and he introduced me to, at the time, the VP of marketing, or VP of emerging media. I pitched. He loved it. He told me to come back the next day and pitch again. He told me to come back the next day, and I kept doing that. And I kept flying to New York for these not necessarily booked meetings with Roc Nation. Eventually, they let me pitch to Jay-Z, and he had a good response, and he shook his head, and he liked it, and that was the beginning of the relationship. It led to us doing some stuff with J. Cole, and I mean, the history is over. I mean, it took about, another couple months for that paper to get signed, but it was done. And I'm a firm believer, if, go back to the whole thing about Dayton, the advocate at Roc Nation, every time he asked me to come back with something else, with show here and pitch here, is he was taking me on dates, and he was trying to see, and he was interviewing me just as I was interviewing him. And then when he felt comfortable to bring me to his boss, which is Jay-Z, I couldn't let him down. And I think that's all this is. I think that's all this is that you're building bigger and bigger trust. I mean, even to this day, if they call me and say, "Rodney, we need LISNR in this meeting. We need LISNR to come talk to Samsung and talk about XYZ," I'm there, because we are ready and are going to continue to go on bigger stages and make everyone who believes us proud.
Awesome. Great. And so we have another question from the audience. Michael wants to know, what are some personal professional development steps you took to prepare yourself to be a CEO?
Oh man, I had to take a lot of personal steps. In the beginning days, I read a lot of books, you know, um, whether that was, I think it was like The Power of Influence. I mean, I read a lot of books. Literally, my first 6, 7 months, I read like 20 books. Everything, whether it was like startup stuff or mobile stuff or just how to be a better leader. So that's important. As I went to, um, as I continued to learn, so every stage your business completely changes, right? A seed business is different than a Series A business and different than a Series B business. And I've needed training at different stages. If the seed was all about reading some books and talking to some mentors and advisors, A was me getting in front of Techstars type of mentors and other companies that had progressed like me. That was the first time I got a CEO coach, um, to understand how to deal with a board, how to deal with these investors. And then even today, I have a new CEO coach. I have a coach for my leadership team. So, you know, you have to continue to invest yourself because you're growing when you are leading a tech company, and what you're trying to prepare yourself for is growing at a rate that is significantly faster than you would if you were working at a Fortune 100 company. You're just not going to grow that fast. So you got to do everything you do to grow really fast. Right now, I have 33 employees. My old boss is my CRO. You know, you have to learn how to manage and inspire and be smart and strategic, despite you not having the years of experience and you not having some of the things that the people you may hire have, and still be confident. So that never changes, and I'm still learning.
At what stage was your company in when you got the first CEO coach?
I got my CEO coach in Series A. Series
Cool.
A.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we
And
have
I,
a, go ahead.
and I mean, before that, I had mentors, like I had advisors, like, but I went and got like a real CEO coach, like he had coached like Jack Dorsey, he had coached
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of the greats, and it was a Techstars recommendation for me to talk to him due to the fact that I was having some of the same challenges that those CEOs had. You know, that was one of the interesting things that I learned is that this entrepreneurship, this tech innovation, everybody has challenges. From the great ones, from Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs got kicked out of he got walked out of his company. So you have to understand what you're going into and not be afraid of it. I think you got to embrace it. I think you got to use it to make yourself stronger. And I love it at this point.
The Startup Nest has a question. They want to know, how did you spread the word about LISNR in the early days, and how did you get your early adopters or your first clients?
Yeah, man. I think you ever seen like with like what's the vacuum salesman, car salesman,
Knocking on every door.
knocking on every door? Yeah, yeah, something like that. You know, I remember opening up. So how did I get Nas and Anthony to sign on? I had 3 music contacts. I scheduled a meeting with them. It was all out in LA. Interscope, Warner, and Sony. I met with those 3. I had a great presentation. I'm all about great presentations and showing up really well, right? My demo worked. I said, is there other people here in LA I should meet? They said, go to Atom Factory. I met. They said, you want anyone else I should meet? Eventually, I met Anthony and Nas's team, and eventually I got my partner. That same model has worked with me in every city I've gone to. When I got to New York, it was the same way. Who do I know in New York? What agencies did I know in New York? Like I remember sending out messages and saying, hey, I would love to tell you what I built and what we're creating. I also use my mentors and my advisors to say, hey, can you give me introductions? And that's how we ended up in our first paycheck came from NBC. And that's kind of how we ended up in that office and in front of that client, was through a mentor that introduced us to an agency friend, and we continued to progress. But we had every meeting. If you wanted to meet with us, we had it. And it was mostly me in New York making it happen.
Then we have Aisha asking, what is the tech climate like in Cincinnati, and have you ever considered moving the headquarters to a more tech popular city?
No. Um, I'm not a fan of San Francisco, and it's just I'm not, and I'm gonna tell you why. Uh, think from raw economic standpoint,
Mhm.
it's a costly place.
Yeah,
And
tell me about it.
and, uh, and when you have when you are trying to figure out an idea and you're African American and there's not a lot of access to capital and you need to reiterate the project, the company 3 and 4 times, you're going to die in San Francisco. Versus in Cincinnati, if you had that amount of money, you're talking about a runway room of 18 to 24 months. So, I have a 6,000 square foot office in Cincinnati that costs $3,000 a month. I have an
That's
average.
like rent for like my 700 square foot apartment in San Francisco.
Exactly. So you got to think about this, right? Like if you are building a product, you are making a product, you technically want to make it, especially in the early stages, in the cheapest place you can possibly make it. And I will put any, like, most people go, oh, well, I outsource my tech team is in India, but I'm in San Francisco. That whatever. In Cincinnati, in the Midwest, I got great talent. I got access to great talent, and especially in the early days, um, the cost of living and the cost in which you can start to reiterate is by far a competitive advantage. And to this day, when I'm in board meetings, my board, I tell them I am in a competitive advantage. I have 33 employees, but for my burn, it looks like I'm a 15 employee company from out of San Francisco. So when you give me $10 million, I'm just going to do a lot more with it. And if you want to, and if that's what this is about. So I just think that when you guys and anyone starting a company, you need to pick the ecosystem that's most receptive to you, can give you funding and make you last the longest time. We have a company called Wiser out of Cincinnati, that's in Cincinnati. That, I mean, she went to Berkeley. She's won startup competitions. She turned down San Francisco money, $1.5 million out of San Francisco, to take $1.5 million out of Cincinnati, Ohio, for the same reason. It's just, if you're not dependent on anything in San Francisco, you shouldn't be there. So that's my decision. And outside of that, I mean, Cincinnati is bubbling. We have 3 minority VC funded companies.
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of cities have that.
What are the
Um,
other
it's a company called Connexus,
two? Okay.
who Techstars led their last round, and then there's a company called Wiser, who the company I'm talking about, who is in Cincinnati as well. And then we just got another minority-led company that is now in Techstars New York or next year or something. It's called Candidly. So I tell people all the time, and we was a couple articles about the Black Founder Network in Cincinnati. I would argue to say that Cincinnati is slowly and quietly becoming a nice little ecosystem for people who look like me, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be a big component of that, because I know $500,000 in Cincinnati is going to go a lot longer, and it's going to give these companies a couple more chances to get it right. And I think that's all you need sometimes.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. And then, Ella, sorry, did you have one?
Yeah. No, I just want to say, like, I mean, this has been like a very insightful discussion, right? And I definitely want to touch on a question that I might butcher her name, but I think it's Mariah Lichtenstern, right?
Yeah,
Wants to
right.
know, um, you know, she's saying you've had some very excellent points, and she just wants to know, like, how can we, as a community, better support you and the LISNR company?
Yeah, I think I would ask the community. You know, uh, all we want to do is get this thing out and improve ourselves. So a lot of companies, whether it's sport teams or broadcasters, TV networks, channel stations, we're doing things with banking companies and finance companies. If you think in any capacity that your company, your project, your idea, your startup that you haven't even done yet could in any way use LISNR, we want to help make that come to life. and support. I think also tell the story. I give an example with Chase. This is a real example, and there was someone at Chase that I went to Howard with, and she's like in their MBA rotational program. She told one of her counterparts about LISNR, and they brought me in to talk about STEM diversity. That led to their innovation team out in San Francisco learning about LISNR. That also led to myself heading out to San Francisco, telling them about, how we could use the technology to do payments. Long story short, that led to us on stage with Chase at CES, and that led to us signing a contract with Chase. And it all stemmed from a person that didn't know technology. She knew a little bit, and she was like, you know what, I'm going to go out and make a recommendation. I'm really proud of that, and I thank her. But literally, that's our story, and I would love for anyone listening to continue to be an advocate for us and what we're building, because I think that's the only way that we'll ever continue to grow.
Awesome. And then definitely last question, are you hiring?
I am hiring. What am I hiring yet? I think I'm hiring a project manager. Mm-hmm. I'm hiring a business development intern. And then I'm hiring a audio engineer / computer engineer. It basically is like a research assistant. I think that's what I'm hiring right now, but I think those are the 3 positions that are over. And of course, there's always chance for business development and sales opportunities at LISNR. But I just know those are the top of the things that we are looking for right now.
Cool. And so definitely want to thank you for your time today, especially it being a Sunday. I appreciate it. This has been really, really helpful. I also want to thank those who asked questions and let them know next hangout will actually be March 13th, where we're talking to Frederick Hudson from Pigeonly. So tune back in for that. And everyone have a good night. Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Rodney.
Good night.
Thanks, Alice.
No problem.